To the world, I was already a ghost. I was Henry Caldwell, the 79-year-old founder of Caldwell Logistics, a man who once commanded fleets of ships that traversed the Pacific and negotiated trade deals that shaped the skyline of Seattle. I was the man who could silence a boardroom with a single raised eyebrow. I was the man who built an empire from a single tugboat. But after a severe hemorrhagic stroke 6 months ago left me partially paralyzed and effectively mute, I had become nothing more than a lump of failing flesh in a rented hospital bed in the center of my own living room. They called it love to the neighbors. They called it duty to the church. I called it what it was, a siege. I spent my days staring at the popcorn ceiling, tracing the irregular patterns of the stucco until my eyes watered, trapped in a body that refused to obey my commands. My left side was dead weight. My throat muscles were so atrophied that speech was impossible, reduced to guttural groans that only frustrated me and amused them. I communicated only through slow, deliberate blinks, 1 for yes, 2 for no. That was the extent of my agency. But my mind? My mind was a caged tiger. It was pacing, watching, and recording every slight. I saw Melissa wearing my late wife's jewelry, the pieces she had promised to save for her own daughter. I saw Todd drinking my scotch, the bottles worth more than his annual salary, straight from the glass without a coaster. I heard every whispered conversation about how long it would take for me to finally let go so they could liquidate the estate and move to Arizona. They thought the stroke had taken my intellect along with my voice. They thought I was a vegetable, a breathing piece of furniture. They were wrong. I was still in here, and I was keeping a ledger. The incident that shattered the last remnant of my trust, the moment that turned my grief into a cold, hard weapon, happened on a stormy Tuesday night. The wind was howling off the Puget Sound, battering against the bay windows I had installed 30 years ago. The panes rattled in their frames, a chaotic percussion to the steady, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the cardiac monitor beside my bed. That sound was the soundtrack to my existence. It was the metronome that proved I was still here. Melissa and Todd were in the kitchen. The open concept design of the house, which I had once loved for its airy feel, now meant I could hear everything.
I could hear the clink of crystal glasses, my Waterford crystal. I could hear the pop of a cork, and I could hear the low murmur of their voices, thick with alcohol and impatience. "He's been staring at that wall all day," Todd said, his voice carried effortlessly. "It's creepy, Mel." "He's not judging anything," Melissa replied, her voice dismissive. "He's brain dead, Todd. The doctor said the cognitive functions are minimal. He's just existing. A reflex that's costing us $5,000 a month in nursing care," Todd grumbled. "That Elena woman is a hawk. We can't fire her yet," Melissa said. "It would look bad. Once he passes, then we clear house." Todd asked. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. "When does he pass? It's been 6 months, Mel. The bridge loan is due in 3 weeks," Melissa snapped. "He's strong. He's always been a stubborn old bastard." I lay there, tears pricking my eyes but refusing to fall. Stubborn old bastard. That was my eulogy for my only child. Then the footsteps approached. Todd walked into the living room. He didn't look at my eyes. He didn't ask if I was thirsty or if I was in pain. He didn't even acknowledge the man in the bed. He looked straight at the machine. He stood over the console of the cardiac monitor. The green line traced its peaks and valleys, documenting the beat of the heart he hated so much. He reached behind the console. I couldn't turn my head to see exactly what he was doing, but I saw his arm flex. I saw the hesitation, then the resolve. Suddenly, the beeping stopped. The rhythmic comfort of the beep, beep, beep vanished, replaced by the howling wind outside. I looked at the screen. The green line, which had been dancing a moment ago, went flat. My heart was beating. I could feel it thumping against my ribs, fueled by a sudden electric surge of adrenaline. I was alive. I was terrified, but the machine said I was dead. The alarm should have been screaming. A flatline triggers a code blue alert. a piercing, high-decibel shriek designed to wake the dead and summon help. It should have been waking the neighbors. It should have been bringing Melissa running, but it was silent. Todd had navigated the digital menu earlier, I realized. He had disabled the audio alarm, and now he had disconnected the sensor lead from the back of the unit, leaving the visual flatline but killing the sound. He stood there for a moment, watching the flatline. He smiled. It wasn't a happy smile.
It was a relieved smile. He walked back to the kitchen. "It's done," I heard him say. Melissa asked. "No," Todd replied, pouring himself another drink. "I killed the speaker first. If he goes into distress tonight, if he has another stroke or a heart attack from the stress, the machine won't alert us." Melissa asked. Her voice didn't hold fear. It didn't hold grief. It held calculation. She sounded like she was discussing a tax write-off. "We can just say we were sleeping," Todd explained, his voice smooth with confidence. "The logs will show the sensor fell off or lost connection hours ago. It happens. The equipment is old." Melissa asked. "If he dies tonight," Todd said, lowering his voice, but not enough to hide it from me, "the life insurance pays out double because of the accidental clause in the hospice rider. Unwitnessed medical failure counts as accidental in some policies, but only if we aren't in the room." "Okay," Melissa whispered. "Okay." "We go to bed," Todd agreed. "We check him at 6 a.m. If he's cold, we call 911 and play the devastated children. If he's still breathing, if you have ever lain in the dark, unable to move a single muscle, listening to your own child bet on the timing of your death like it was a horse race, you know the absolute coldness that seeped into my marrow. It is a chill that no blanket can warm. Subscribe now, because I decided right then that if they wanted a flatline, I would give them one, but it wouldn't be mine." They turned off the kitchen lights. I heard them walking up the stairs. I heard their bedroom door close. I was alone. I lay there in the dark, the storm raging outside, listening to my own heartbeat in the silence. Thump, 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 thump. It was a defiant sound. They had left me to die. They had rigged the equipment to ensure that if I choked, if I seized, if my heart gave out from the terror of the storm, no one would know. They were passively murdering me. They weren't holding a pillow over my face, but they were removing the safety net that kept me tethered to this world. I tried to move my hand. I tried to knock the water glass over on the nightstand. I tried to make any sound that would prove I was still here, still fighting. But the paralysis held me fast. It was like being buried alive in my own skin. I was screaming inside my head, a silent, chaotic roar of betrayal that echoed against the walls of my skull. I am not dead. I am not dead. I am not dead.
I stayed awake all night. I refused to close my eyes. I stared at the flat green line on the silent monitor, glowing eerily in the dark living room. It was a lie, a digital lie. I willed my heart to keep beating. I focused on the anger. I let the hatred flow through my veins like a drug, stimulating my system, keeping the blood pumping. I thought about the business I built. I thought about the sacrifices I made for Melissa, the private schools, the cars, the house down payment. I thought about how she had looked at me on her wedding day and how she looked at me now. I survived the night on pure spite. Morning came slowly. The gray light of a Seattle dawn filtered through the windows. The storm had broken, leaving behind a wet, heavy silence. At 7 a.m. sharp, the front door opened. It wasn't Melissa. She wouldn't be up until noon if she could help it. It was Elena. Elena was the palliative care nurse I paid for out of my own pocket, from the accounts Todd hadn't found yet. She was a woman of 40, tough as nails, with eyes that missed nothing. Todd had been trying to fire her for weeks, claiming she was abrasive, but my lawyer had locked her contract in before the stroke. Elena walked in, shaking her wet umbrella. She hummed a little tune, bringing a sudden burst of life into the mausoleum. She took one look at the monitor. She saw the flat line. She saw the black screen where the vitals should be. She dropped her back. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Mister." She didn't call 911. She rushed to me.
Her hands were warm on my neck, pressing firmly against the carotid artery. She was checking for a pulse. She found it. Strong, fast, angry. She let out a breath she had been holding. She looked at the machine. Her eyes narrowed. She walked around to the back of the unit. She saw the disconnected lead hanging behind the bed frame, a place it couldn't have fallen by accident. It had been unscrewed and tucked away. She looked at the digital menu. She tapped the screen. Audio alarm, disabled. She went still. She looked at the stairs leading to Melissa and Todd's room. Then she looked back at me. "Mr. Caldwell," she whispered. Her voice was trembling slightly. I stared at her. I blinked twice. "No." I stared at her. I held her gaze. I blinked once. A slow, deliberate, heavy blink. "Yes." Elena's face hardened. She was a woman who had seen everything: death, pain, loss. But this shook her. I saw the realization dawn on her face. This wasn't negligence.
This was attempted homicide. She didn't scream. She didn't call the police immediately. She knew the game. She knew they would spin it. "We need to be smart, Henry," she whispered, leaning close to my ear, using my first name for the first time. "I'm going to hook you back up. I'm going to pretend I noticed nothing, but I'm going to check the internal memory of this machine. It logs every keystroke." She moved quickly, reconnecting the lead, enabling the alarm. The beep, beep, beep returned, filling the room with the sound of life. She pulled out a flat black device. It looked like a tablet, but thicker. It had a camera bar mounted on the top. "I brought this from the clinic," she whispered, keeping her voice low. "I wasn't supposed to take it, but I had a feeling. It's an eye-tracking communication device. It reads your retina. If you can blink, you can type." She started to mount it on the swing arm over my bed, but then we heard it. Footsteps, heavy, thudding footsteps on the stairs. Melissa and Todd were coming down. They were coming down expecting a corpse. They were coming down to find me cold. I looked at the tablet. I looked at Elena. "Hide it," I willed my eyes to say. I shifted my gaze to the sheets, then back to the tablet. Elena understood. She was quick. She slid the tablet under the heavy wool blankets at the foot of the bed, hiding it completely. She stood up, grabbed her stethoscope, and began checking my blood pressure, her face composing itself into a mask of professional boredom. Melissa walked into the living room. She was wearing a silk robe, feigning a yawn. Todd was right behind her, looking pale and anxious. "Good morning, Elena," Melissa said, her voice tight. We slept in." She looked at the monitor. I saw it. I saw the moment she registered the green line dancing across the screen. I saw the beep, beep, beep hit her like a slap in the face. She didn't look relieved. She looked devastated. The disappointment washed over her face so clearly it was almost comical. She exchanged a panicked glance with Todd. "Oh," Melissa stammered. He's doing okay," Elena said coldly, not looking up from her chart. "His heart rate was elevated, almost like he was scared. But his heart is strong, Mrs. Miller, very strong." Todd looked at the back of the machine. He saw the lead plugged back in. He went white. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking at the floor. "Good," Todd muttered.
That's... I stared at Melissa. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I locked my eyes onto hers and I held them there. I let her see the clarity. I let her see the intelligence. I let her see the absolute, undiluted hatred burning behind my pupils. She froze. She shivered, pulling her robe tighter around herself. "Stop staring, Dad," she whispered, looking away. She walked into the kitchen to start the coffee, her hands shaking. They thought the machine was broken. They thought they had just had a run of bad luck. They didn't know that the machine was logging every second of their betrayal. They didn't know that the tablet under my sheets was about to give the ghost a voice. And they didn't know that the vegetable in the bed was about to become the star witness for the prosecution. The most exhausting part of being a prisoner in your own body isn't the paralysis. It's the performance. For the next 7 days, I had to be the thing they wanted me to be. A fading echo, a hollow shell, a burden wrapped in expensive sheets. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning its lazy circles, forcing my face to remain slack, even when rage threatened to make my jaw tremble. I let them feed me flavorless gray mush, pureed peas and lukewarm oatmeal, spooned into my mouth with the impatient aggression of someone feeding a parking meter.
I swallowed it without choking, without grimacing, playing the part of the compliant invalid. While I ate sludge, they ordered takeout from the steakhouse I used to own a stake in. I smelled the char of ribeye and the earthy scent of truffles wafting from the kitchen island just 10 feet away. "This is good," Todd mumbled around a mouthful of meat. "We should order the Wagyu next time. Put it on the company card." I cut the card, but the account is still open, Melissa replied, sipping a glass of my Bordeaux. "I told the bank I'm his medical proxy. They didn't ask questions. They just wanted to know if he was stable." Todd snorted. "He's a vegetable, Mel." I listened. I recorded. And when they left the room to sleep or to argue in the garage about their mounting gambling debts, I went to work. Elena was my hands. She was magnificent. She moved with the quiet efficiency of a thief, sliding the eye-tracking tablet out from under the mattress the moment the coast was clear. She mounted it on the swing arm, calibrated it to my retina, and then stood guard by the window while I typed.
Typing with your eyes is a slow, agonizing process. You have to focus on a letter, hold your gaze until it registers, and then move to the next. It takes patience. Fortunately, patience was the only currency I had left. Dear Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling was my lawyer, a shark of a man who wore three-piece suits and billed by the minute. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. Melissa had told me he was too busy to visit. I found out later she had blocked his number from my phone and told his office that I was too agitated for legal counsel. I am alive. I wrote emails until my eyes burned and watered. I sent him everything. Elena had downloaded the diagnostic logs from the cardiac monitor onto a USB drive, logs that clearly showed the alarm being manually disabled via the admin menu at 9:15 p.m. on Tuesday and re-enabled at 6:45 a.m. Wednesday. It was a digital fingerprint of attempted murder. I sent him the audio files. Elena had taped a high-fidelity voice recorder to the back of my headboard, hidden in the fabric folds. It captured every word they said while standing over me. It captured Todd betting on my death. It captured Melissa discussing how to forge my signature on the transfer orders for the Cayman accounts. By Friday, Sterling had replied, "I have the files, Henry. I'm getting a judge out of bed. Do not let them know you are lucid. We need to catch them in the act of fraud to ensure the trust is locked down. Stay safe." I didn't want safety. I wanted a public execution. Not a violent one, but a social one. I wanted to strip them of their pretenses in front of the very people they were trying to impress. The opportunity arrived on Saturday. It was my 80th birthday. Melissa and Todd, ever the opportunists, had organized a celebration of life party. It was a ghoulish affair, a preemptive wake disguised as a birthday milestone. They had invited the Wolves, my old business partners, the board of directors from Caldwell Logistics, and the wealthy socialites of Seattle's upper crust. Their goal wasn't to celebrate me. Their goal was to secure bridge loans from my associates. They needed cash to cover Todd's bad investments before the estate officially transferred. They planned to parade my frailty in front of the board, implying that I was incapacitated and that they would be taking control of the trust imminently. They were using my dying body as collateral. Saturday morning was a whirlwind of indignity. Melissa shaved me, her hand rough and careless, nicking my chin. She dressed me in a tuxedo shirt and a bow tie, but didn't bother with pants since the blankets covered my legs. I was a prop, a doll. The living room was transformed. Gold balloons floated against the ceiling. A massive banner reading 80 years of excellence hung over the fireplace. Waiters circulated with champagne trays. The guests began to arrive at 2 p.m. I was propped up in the hospital bed, which they had draped in velvet to make it look less clinical. I watched them come in. Men I had sailed with, women I had hosted at charity galas. They looked at me with pity. They leaned in close, speaking in that loud, slow voice people use for the deaf or the stupid. "Happy birthday, Henry," old George Patterson said, patting my hand. "You look—" I stared at him. I wanted to scream. "I am not peaceful, George. I am plotting." I watched Todd shaking hands near the bar. He was laughing, clapping men on the back, pouring generous drinks. He looked the part of the devoted son-in-law, the heir apparent. I watched the hand he used to hold his scotch, the same hand that had reached behind my monitor 3 nights ago to unplug my life. "Attention, everyone," Melissa called out, tapping a spoon against a glass.
She stood by my bed, placing a possessive hand on my shoulder. She was wearing a black dress, somber yet elegant. She was dressing for the widow role she hoped to play soon. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. "It means so much to us, and to Dad. As you can see, Henry is resting. The stroke took his voice and much of his spark. He can't communicate, but he feels your love." She looked down at me, her smile sad and sweet. "Actually," a voice boomed from the back of the room. The room went dead silent. Melissa's head snapped up. Todd froze mid-sip. It was Mr. Sterling. He stood in the entryway, flanked by two large men in dark suits, private security, and a uniformed police officer. Melissa's smile faltered, twitching at the corners. "Mr. Sterling, we didn't invite you. This is a family gathering." "He's up for this," Sterling said, walking forward. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. Todd stepped forward, his face flushing red. "Now see here, Sterling, you can't just barge in. Henry is in a fragile state." "I don't think I am," Sterling said calmly. He nodded to the corner of the room.
Elena stepped forward. She walked up to the bed. She didn't ask Melissa's permission. She grabbed the sheet covering the swing arm mechanism I had hidden under my legs. She pulled it back. She swung the mechanical arm out. The eye-tracking tablet hovered directly in front of my face. "Todd," snapped, panic rising in his voice. "Get that thing away from him." "It's his voice," Elena said clearly. I focused my eyes on the screen. The calibration dot appeared. I locked onto it. It turned green. The room held its breath. The only sound was the hum of the cardiac monitor. Beep, beep, beep. I selected the file I had spent 3 nights writing. I stared at the play icon. A synthesized voice, loud and distinctly robotic, projected from the tablet speakers. It cut through the air like a knife. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my funeral." Gasps rippled through the crowd. George Patterson dropped his glass. Melissa went pale, her hand recoiling from my shoulder as if I burned her. "It's glitching. He's not doing that," she shrieked, looking at the guests with wide, terrified eyes. "The only malfunction," the computerized voice continued, relentless and devoid of emotion, "was on Tuesday night." Todd shouted. He lunged for the machine. "Shut it off. He's senile." He reached for the tablet, intending to smash it. The security guards moved faster. They intercepted him, blocking him with a wall of muscle. Todd bounced off them, stumbling back into the dessert table. "I have the data logs," my voice continued, echoing off the high ceilings. "I have the audio recording of you betting on my death to collect the double indemnity insurance." I looked at Melissa. "And I have the transfer orders you forged for the Cayman accounts yesterday morning," the voice finished. Mr. Sterling held up a manila folder. "We have the bank records, Todd. The IP address traces back to your laptop in this house." The police officer stepped forward, handcuffs clicking on his belt. "Todd Miller, Melissa Caldwell." The scene that followed was chaotic and beautiful. The facade of the grieving daughter dissolved instantly into screeching, ugly accusations. "He made me do it," Melissa screamed, pointing at Todd as the officer grabbed her wrist. "You wanted the house. You said he was a vegetable," Todd roared, struggling as he was cuffed. The guests, the board members, the socialites, stared in horror.
They backed away, clutching their pearls and their champagne flutes, witnessing the rot beneath the surface of the Caldwell family. As they dragged Melissa past my bed, she stopped, digging her heels into the carpet. She looked at me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. The mask was gone. This was her true face. "You," she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "You're nothing!" I focused my eyes on the keyboard one last time. I had one final message saved. I locked my gaze on the play button. "I am the captain," the synthesized voice boomed, final and absolute. The guests, my old friends, broke into stunned, spontaneous applause. It started with George and spread through the room. They weren't clapping for a performance. They were clapping for justice. The police led them out. The flashing lights painted the living room walls in strokes of red and blue. Mr. Sterling walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's done, Henry. The assets are frozen. The restraining orders are active." I looked at Elena.
She was standing by the monitor, tears in her eyes. She smiled and squeezed my hand. I blinked once. Thank you. The party cleared out. The balloons looked ridiculous now, floating in the silence of the empty house. I was 80 years old. I was paralyzed. I was alone in a mansion that felt too big for one man. But as I listened to the police sirens fade into the distance, replaced by the quiet rhythm of the room, I heard it. Beep, beep, beep. My heart rate monitor, steady, strong, uninterrupted. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It wasn't just machinery. It was the sound of a life that was finally, truly mine again.